Okay. Hello, and everyone, welcome to Out and Equals webinar, Latin American Perspectives, Shifting Landscapes. My name is C.V. Viverito, Senior Manager of Global Initiatives with Out and Equal. My pronouns are they, them, or in Spanish, ella, and in Portuguese, ile. Thank you so much for joining us. Just to give a quick shout out to our friends calling in from Latin America. Quiero dar as boas-vindas aos nossos amigos, amigas e amigues no Brasil. Estamos muito felizes em conversar com todos vocês. Muito obrigada por se juntar a nós hoje. Y por supuesto, hola a todos que se están conectando hoy desde otros países de América Latina. Es un gran placer tener este grupo maravilloso aquí hoy para hablar sobre cómo están cambiando nuestras realidades y qué podemos hacer. And besides those quick shout outs, this webinar will take place in English and will be about an hour of conversation among our speakers, and then we'll open it up to Q&A towards the end for about another 30 minutes or so. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce today's moderator, Deena Fidas, Managing Director and Chief Program and Partnerships Officer with Out and Equal.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, CV. As CV introduced me, I'm Deena Fidas. My pronouns are she, her. And I'm so thrilled to see all of the extended Out and Equal family that are joining us today, and so many friends that I've gotten to know over my last decade of work in Latin America. So originally, today's virtual gathering was going to be in person, as many of you know, in Sao Paulo. Sao Paulo has quickly become one of our largest global gatherings of LGBTQ workplace advocates. Originally, we were going to have between 400 and 500 people representing 12 different countries in the room back in early March. But of course, because of the COVID pandemic, we had to recalibrate. And so we are so pleased to be able to keep the momentum going. Every day at Out and Equal, we are looking at ways that we can partner and support our large global network of government, corporate, and nonprofit advocates. For some, they may casually think, well, it's a global pandemic. Doesn't that just mean we need to focus in on essentials? And where does diversity, equity, and inclusion fit within that? And we know firsthand, having weathered various crises in the past, and our panel of experts also brings together years of experience here. We know that those employers, those workplaces that had the foresight to invest deeply in their people, to ensure that they were promoting cultures of belonging, that they were listening to some of the most marginalized voices so that they could arrive at creative and long-term solutions to business continuity challenges, that they are in fact set up to weather this in the most successful ways. And that's why we know that the business of belonging, the business of LGBTQ equality is absolutely essential right now, perhaps more than ever. And so with that, I'm very pleased to welcome all of you. We are trilingual here today, Portuguese, Spanish, and English. Please feel free when the time comes in the chat box to use your preferred language, because we have speakers of all across our panel and across our staff. And so now I'd like to introduce our esteemed panel, joining us across the continents, from Mexico City to Sao Paulo. We have Adriana da Costa Ferreira, Latin America Diversity and Inclusion Manager from IBM. Javier Constante, President, Dow Latin America. Karla Arnaiz, Executive Director for LATAM, Canada, and Bahamas, also the Head of Talent Diversity and Inclusion. Thank you all for joining us, and welcome. And so Javier, I think we just need your cameras on. And Karla, we'll get your camera on. Thank you. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn to each of you to give our audience a bit more information about your role, where you're located, and also what motivates you around diversity and inclusion. So we'll just go in order. Let's start with Adriana. Dri.
Yeah, thank you, Deena. Do you hear me well?
Yes, thank you.
Very nice. So, olá, pessoal do Brasil, tudo bem? Buenas tardes a las personas que están nos viendo de otros países. Con mucho gusto. I'm very happy to be here, very proud to be one of the speakers of this panel. Of course, every one of us would like to be together, right? Meeting, seeing each other. But I think you have to thank for the technology that bring us so close. I am the Diversity and Inclusion Leader for Latin America here at IBM. I am in this specific role for 2 years now. And I think the thing that most excites me about being a D&I leader is that I can learn every day. And I've learned so much since I joined this position. I learned not only about our community, the LGBT, because I didn't know a lot, for example, about transgender or bisexuals in the past, but also because you have this possibility to interconnect, and to talk about people who are LGBT and people with disability, with different genders, different sexual identities. So I think we have always something new to learn. And when we think we are teaching somebody, because we learn a lot, we are just starting learning something new. So diversity inclusion is definitely my passion.
Thank you so much. And Javier.
Hello, everybody. I'm Javier Constante. I'm based in Sao Paulo, Brazil. I'm originally from Argentina, and I joined Dow 30 years ago. And that happened more or less at the same time that I started my relation with my husband, Carlos. So I always say that it's a little bit of a competition between Dow and Carlos on who occupies my heart. But it's a joke. My heart is only in one hands. I have been part of the diversity and inclusion initiatives for a long time, participating in different employee resources group. I started working with disabilities and then supported women. And same as Adriana was mentioning, for me, it was a learning experience on inclusion, something that I always had in my heart, but I couldn't bring it to my brain in order to exercise it and make it real. Obviously, same to Adriana, and I'm sorry, I'm using your words, Adriana, learning about LGBT was also fantastic because I probably knew only a certain part of our group, but not all the characteristics and all the sensitivities and learning, and not only learning, but also teaching other people on how to really practice it and live it. So I'm part of the senior inclusion leadership of Dow ever since we have an inclusion and diversity officer, and I'm very proud of it. Thanks for the opportunity for participating in this conversation. It's really great what you're doing here.
Thank you, Javier, so much. And Karla.
Hello, it's really nice to be with you today. Thank you very much for having me. I am based in Mexico City. I am the Latin, Canada, and Bahamas talent and diversity head. And that has been amazing because when we talk about diversity, we are talking about talent people. I have been in the bank for the last 5 years. My role started with HR country head in Mexico that I'm currently keep, and the diversity piece, and then they add the talent piece with me. I started with the diversity topic many years ago, and I am a passionate people about this. I love to be close for the initiatives. Not because it's just the right way to do the things. It's because through the diversity, we touch hearts, okay? We connect very well with the people. And especially with the LGBT community, as my partner said, it's a learn. For me, it has been, an evolution, okay? Is to understand a different dimension that I haven't, crossed in the past. But I admire the team, I admire the people, and I feel very connected with all of you. Thank you, Deena. It is very nice to be with you today. Muchas gracias a todos.
Thank you so much, Karla. So let's first start with what I think is on everyone's minds and perhaps in our hearts or in our heads. How are you all coping with the crisis? Whether you can answer as individuals, how you personally are coping, but also what your companies are doing, and as leaders, what you are doing for your people. So maybe we start with Javier.
Hey, I think it's been challenging. It's been challenging for all of us because we have a very strong combination of concerns, emotional ups and downs, and sometimes even fear, may I say, because in the end of the day, you're also afraid of being sick or being infected, even if you take all the precautions. So first of all, I started to find my way of living at home without going out. And I'll tell you, so far, knocking wood, we're doing well. But my first priority was the people, how they were feeling. As we are asking the people to tell us which are the major points of concern. And therefore we try to articulate solutions for them that really fits them, because it's very difficult when you don't see a person face to face to get to know it. So we're doing a poll or surveys or interviews, and then we're articulating solutions, mainly on the emotional and psychological wellness, but also on how we can support them when they need to work at home with children, partners, or people they take care of.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. And Karla, before the call, we were talking about some of the specific concerns and initiatives coming up at JPMC.
Yeah, I'm really proud to work in this company. There is a lot of resources for our people in general, employees and managers, to lead with this COVID crisis. Of course, to work remotely has a lot of challenges. And, you know, we try to be focused on the not just physical, also mental health for our people. We understand that we are facing a collective, you know, depression in general. And we are trying to be close with all of them, providing different information. Also, we have an excellent tool, the Equilibrium tool for our employees available. They can find, you know, a lot of advice, but also practices for meditation, exercise, you know, and I think that is something that we need to consider, because of course, to keep our people health is our priority. Personally, I think my kids hate me. At the beginning, I start pushing to clean house, you know, review the clothes, organize the things at home. But of course, it was my reaction, my stress reaction to this situation. I am following different, you know, guidance and resources that the company is providing for us as a manager. I feel better now. I have been connect with my teams and with the people. The remote connections and remote meetings has been increasing a lot. We have different resources as you have. The Zoom is one of them, but we are trying to keep the connectivity, no matter that we are, most of the 95% in the region is working remotely. Thank you, Deena.
Absolutely, indeed. For those of us who are parents, this has been quite an extraordinary time. Thank goodness for Zoom backgrounds to block the kids running back and forth on the screens. Dri, do you want to jump in as well?
Yes, I want to bring not only the personal perspective, but the fact that being a manager, I think this pandemic has shown lots of opportunities for us, but actually also an extra concern, because I have many people reporting to me in Latin America from different levels of learning curve, including, you know, belonging to our team. So I have to support them in different levels, so and understand their needs, personal needs. So we cannot treat, of course, we will not treat everyone as one, but I think in this time, somebody will be very excited to be at home, or because they don't have, for example, kids, so they are free to be home and it's okay for them. But for others, not. I have an employee who has 3 children, and there's always time for her to be holding 1 or 2 of them at the same time. I feel sorry about her, but I understand that working is also important for her and you need her. And so I think from the management perspective, you have to be very sensitive And in my case, using the agile to connect us, you know, to turn our job is not faster, but clever. Personally, I think I am starting to feel a little bit tired because I love to be in the nature. So I feel so much. I was in a plane of walking 1 kilometer more per week. And I was in the 11 kilometer work trekking, right? So I feel I miss the opportunity to be out in the woods walking, but I think soon I'll be there.
Absolutely, absolutely. So in some ways, all of our, certainly all of our work has changed. And in terms of the conversation today, thinking about the entire LATAM region, and this is why we have representatives who not only live and have lived throughout the region, but in their professional lives are responsible for the entire LATAM region. You know, taking stock, we just rounded out 10 full years of DF, of the Federal District of Mexico City having marriage equality, which was quite significant. I kind of personally can't believe it's already been 10 years. Chile has passed a proactive gender identity law. In Brazil, we had the historic passage of the law through our friends, in part our friends' advocacy, Ananda Puchta, to outlaw transphobia and homophobia. You know, we're also, of course, seeing, you know, the historic election of Bogota's openly lesbian mayor. So we have a lot of markers of progress across the region. We also have challenges that persist, from day-to-day stigma and discrimination to still very high rates of violence and workplace discrimination that disproportionately affects the transgender community. And so this is a very, very open question, but I'm hoping that you can each give some initial thoughts to how you see the progress in LGBTQ equality across the region, and also some of the places for real opportunity for change. In other words, the things that are not going well that we collectively can work on.
I don't want to be the first one this time, so I leave it on somebody.
Yeah, I can start if you don't mind. I can do it. So being in this role, Deena, of the Diversity and Inclusion Leader for LA, I have to deal with different level of support from the government in 10 countries, right, where IBM is seated. And we see how much is important when we live in a country where the government support the public policies, right? And especially the LGBT community. So I took some notes here and received many feedbacks from my team in different countries like Colombia, Chile, Uruguay, and Mexico. And in summary, what I see is that we had some progress in some countries since 2012, 2019, very recent awards that companies are receiving in different countries, because this counts a lot. In the past, we were like invisible because there was nobody looking at the companies trying to understand what they are doing and offering some kind of award. This, from the perspective of a company, it's very important that we have a channel to connect with the external public, the external candidates, to talk about what we do and what we can do to learn and employ LGBT employees. So for us, this is so important. But also have teams like Pride Connections, Forum LGBT, Out and Equal working as a group and supporting the companies in this journey has been like remarkable in this journey that I've seen in the past 7 years. And especially on regards of IBM, we have different levels of offerings of support to employees, really depending on what the country already offered. For example, in case of Argentina, where the government give all the support to a transgender sex reassignment surgery. But we so as a manager, I am always, and IBM is always trying to push a little bit and give ever more than the government is offering, more than the law is requiring or letting us do. So we are pushing, we are connecting with the government, having very hard conversations sometimes, because you don't want to, not only to regret, but to take steps back on what we achieve. And as all of you know, Brazil is one of the biggest issues because of politics, not to mention names.
Yes, thank you so much. Javier.
I have a little bit of concern of the current situation. I wouldn't say, let me start differently. From a country perspective, I think there were a lot of progresses, and I think Adriana mentioned them all. I think we participate more or less in the same countries. And a major concern, said, is Brazil. There was an expression today here of the president that the World Health Organization is stimulating homosexuality, and that is bad. How can they trust the treatment towards COVID recommendation? That happened like an hour and a half ago.
Oh, wow.
Politics here is just an expression, but an expression that may generate different feelings in the people. And my personal concern is that within the COVID-19 environment, we are more or less locked at home, and we need to continue working. And the challenge for us is that this situation is going to remain for quite some time. So I think that the challenge for all of us is, how do we continue with all our initiatives of inclusiveness, regardless of the isolation that we are currently experiencing? We are down, we have a lot of initiatives that are from engaging with different NGOs and social activities outside, close to the sites, manufacturing sites, engaging society, to link into a transgender NGO so that we can eventually find candidates to join Dow and give them the proper training to have an opportunity to have a proper job. And most of those initiatives may seem to be in the freezer. I think that we need to put an extra effort, but we need to bring back to the table the discussion about diversity and inclusion, regardless of the specific conditions at which we are living. If we stop, my concern is if we stop, we're going to step back. And I don't want any single step back. So not so much the concern with the governmental situation, except Brazil, Adriana, I fully agree with you, but also how we continue to progress. I don't want to stop. I want to continue moving forward. That's from my side.
Indeed.
In my case, and this is a personal view, of course, but I think we need to continue pushing. We have a lot of good things and things that we need to celebrate, as Deena mentioned it at the beginning of this comment. And of course, the companies, we play a very important role to continue pushing the government, to continue pushing, the market in which we operate, of course, and we need to continue inspire other organizations to be part of this momentum, in general. Which I can share with you is, for JP Morgan, it's really important to continue focusing on the diverse and inclusive culture. Okay, we are going to celebrate in May our diversity week in the region, and I know that it is a challenge now, keep this connectivity and keep our employees and managers engaged. But we need to continue, the priorities, no matter that our reality is different. The resources are different, but it's part of the challenges and it's part of the agenda for us in the region to continue prioritize the diversity and inclusion culture as part of the business of the business priorities. Okay.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to go just a little bit off of our framework here, because I think, Karla, your comments bring up such an important point, which is, in your case, as you're talking about, JPMC is continuing to prioritize inclusion as part of this core business continuity. And I know Javier and Dri for Dow and IBM, it's similar. Have you heard of any skepticism or pushback that says, well, wait a minute, we're in the middle of a crisis. We can't worry about that now? Because I'm fairly certain at least some of our audience has at least feared that, if not heard explicitly, that some managers don't think diversity and inclusion is absolutely essential right now.
Let me share something with you, Deena. When I start talking about the diversity week, when this contingency period started, I received messages from my employees, especially in Brazil, saying, stop it, it's not time, we're in contingency. But it was not because of the contingency. It was because the diversity week has been a big celebration for the region for the last 5 years. They wanted, you know, to keep the events, to keep the people connect, and they never imagined that this contingency week prolongs for different weeks. Okay, I said no in that time because I received clearly guidance for the CEO in the region that diversity is a priority. We need to continue with our agenda. I said no, we are going to create a new reality for us in the region to celebrate our week, but we keep the celebration in the calendar as it is now. And well, now we have the different event schedules. I received some messages from my employees saying, we add one more, you know, in the agenda. Today is the deadline for them to complete the agenda for the diversity week. And I received yesterday one note that say, just wait, I want to add my one more event in my country. So, well, it is what it is, and I'm really happy to be so hard saying, no, we continue with the calendar, we continue with the priority. I have not received any, you know, stop or message from managers saying that this is not important. It was the opposite.
It's wonderful to hear.
Well, in my case, the one that sends the message is myself in Latin America, and I asked all the ERGs, all the employee resource groups to meet me for an hour for a virtual coffee next week to think about the activities we are going to carry out. Because I think, Karla, similar to what you said, people are overwhelmed by meetings and everything. Sometimes conversations that used to happen coincidentally in a corridor, now it's a video conference call. And therefore takes more time. But as we get used to working from home, and I think that we are, in all the tension of working from home, we are plateauing now. People are having creativity. And honestly, I had a conversation the day before yesterday with one of the colleagues of our GLAD team saying, Javier, we need to organize a virtual Pride Parade. Because I have been always going to the Pride Parade in my life, and this year there's not going to be a Pride Parade. So maybe we can create it together with IBM and JP Morgan, and we put many companies, we do a virtual Pride Parade for Latin America. But I think people are starting to have this creativity and they're still moving. And from a company perspective, today we reviewed, for instance, the result, and it's part of our personal goals for senior leaders, the diversity and inclusion targets. So we reviewed them, it was reaffirmed by our CEO, so it's moving. It's not fading, it's just that we need to reshape and rewind ourselves to the new environment, I think.
And Deena, yeah, do you have time to comment this still?
Yes, please, Dri. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I will tell you, I never worked so much in my life. The past 2 or 3 weeks have been like crazy because one of the message, I think, main message on this pandemic that we never faced before is that we must think about the empathy that you must show and feel about other people working with us. So empathy has everything to do with diversity and inclusion, everything to do with our LGBT communities, our ERGs. And so one of the first requests that I received was not related to LGBT, was about people with disability that had to receive some accommodation to work from home, as I think Javier mentioned before, something about accommodation. But I think one of the important things that we have in mind as diversity leaders is that for an event to be concluded or open the doors and receive everybody, there's a lot of work that should be done before. 2 or 3 months in advance, we start to think about how you manage our budget, who will be the guys that be talking with us what we want to promote this year. And globally, IBM is working on the Pride Month with such a strong message that connect, with this moment we are living. So I'm really proud of what IBM is already planning. And I see that people also are connecting with the volunteering opportunity that we face now. So this is connects so much with the BRGs and RGs that we have, that today, this morning, I had a conversation with an IBMer trying to open a new BRGs on regards of working environment, because she understands that this is the time that we should care about our planet, about our people, and so. So I think everybody is also looking for an opportunity to contribute. And I think this is the time that diversity inclusion can add value to the business, to people.
Wonderful, thank you. Now we're already starting to get questions from the audience, which is wonderful. So please keep putting them in the chat box. I think we'll have just a few more of the topics that we had planned as a panel. And then I also want to introduce some of the wonderful questions that are coming in. So I think particularly given each of your unique roles and how visible you are as leaders, I'm hoping that we can talk about what does it mean to be inclusive every day. So on the one hand, we have formal structures of inclusion, the clear non-discrimination policies, the employee resource group or diversity and inclusion council. But what does it mean to be an everyday advocate or a vocal advocate for LGBTQ inclusion?
That's a challenging question. You notice that we are all quiet now, Deena.
Yeah.
No,
It can also be how you model everyday inclusion, I would say. Sometimes it's just being yourself.
I always say that one of the best way of doing it is being authentic. When I started to share that I was gay in Dow, the first thing I did it was with my team, with my direct reports. And I told them the story of my wedding, and in that way I connected to my story. And the reason I told them, the reason why I'm sharing this with you is because the thing I value the most is being authentic. Authenticity is one of the strongest values. Authenticity is something that the LGBT group sometimes is difficult to accomplish because you don't dare being authentic in every single space. And therefore I told them, I'm trying to be authentic with you because I wanted to be authentic with me. In my case, being authentic with you is disclosing this to all of you and making it public. In your side, it may be different. So I think from authenticity, the authenticity perspective, moving on the daily behavior is very clear the path through and how you can really make it happen. And the other way I try to do it is always being available for talking about LGBT issues with people that sometimes are not confident to be authentic, that trust. And therefore being that type of mentor that they were always looking for, but they could never dare asking for. That's my personal way.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I gave them to Adriana and Karla to think for the answer. You know, I was generous here.
I would like to share, you know, the proposal or the value proposition for diversity in the company. Our value proposition is you belong here. It's clear that we need to continue, you know, embrace the culture to feel all the people that is working in JP Morgan that they belong. Our mission, diversity is an imperative, and together we are all accountable for our culture of respect and inclusion. We do this in 3 pillars: learn, listening, and lead. Okay, learn through every interaction. Participate in mindfulness learning opportunities, including Journey to Inclusive Teams. Listening, introduce inclusion index to identify cultural barriers. And lead with intentional action, you know, be an advocate for others and spotlight behaviors that support inclusion. That is, you know, and I think that answers your question, Deena. We keep in all our decisions, in our day-to-day, in our discussion of promotion, the diversity and inclusion as part of.
Yes, wonderful. So some of the themes that I'm hearing: visibility, authenticity, mentorship. And I think for some that have dialed in, it may be a matter of becoming a mentor to somebody else or seeking out a mentor. Perhaps if somebody who's younger in their careers, finding that mentor. And then these company-wide concepts, mindfulness, learning and listening and openness. Frankly, we don't hear that enough in some of our corporate circles. And so it's very valuable that is how JP Morgan has defined those pillars. Dri, do you have some additional thoughts on this subject?
Yes, an additional thought on being intentional.
Mm-hmm.
I think every day I wake up, there is a mission for me to be accomplished in this role. And everything that I've done in these 7 years of diversity and inclusion is to have a look at my side and understand if there is somebody else that has not reached the position that I have in the company, or let's say that we here in this panel are few of the people that reached some leadership position as a minority group, let's say. And so what can I do to open doors to other people, not only to grow in their career, but to enter a company like ours and feel respected, feel that they belong. And so if you're not intentional on doing a special hiring, looking for initiative that can add value to your company, maybe you do always the same. And to be intentional, you also have to be courageous,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Courageous, yes. Because in this difficult time, sometimes you may face some people saying, this is not important because people are losing their lives and so on. And of course, this is very important, but we have to think about how we can balance these and not leave our brothers and sisters behind.
Yes, thank you so much. Because this is such an incredible panel, we really are getting so many comments and questions. And so I don't want to stand in the way, because if I were watching this, I would just want my questions answered. So let me start first. Let me also answer some points that have been raised, which is, how can we get in touch? We're trying to build our Pride network either in Mexico City or in Sao Paulo. We as Out and Equal will very gladly, we will follow up with everyone who has dialed in and exchange more of this information so that we can support you convening virtually, but also in more direct touch with one another. We should also say, and I've worked with them, and I know Karla and I have worked together with groups like Pride Connection. I think Dri and Javier, you mentioned them too. Pride Connection chapters have popped up in almost every Latin American country. These are not, in most cases, these are not unique advocacy groups. They really are, these are consortiums of LGBT employee resource groups and leaders from different companies. And they was born in Mexico City, and also with a lot of leadership from certainly every company on this call. But Javier, our friend Beto Pino, who has been an extraordinary leader at Dow, was an early leader for Pride Connection, and IBM was one of the founding partners, and Karla has herself.
Lovely person, of course.
Yeah. Just incredible leaders there. So, so we will absolutely ensure that everyone can stay connected after this. We have a more open-ended question that I think is, it's very telling, because we at Out and Equal, we talk about belonging a lot, and we talk about the term intersectionality. The idea that at any given time, a person might move through the world facing challenges or opportunities based on their gender, their orientation, their parental status, their ethnic background. And so we have a question from one of our members here about, what are some of the challenges as you see them in diversity and inclusion broadly? Doesn't have to be LGBT specific. Where do you think across Latin America we still have a ways to go? And how can we lead there?
I can start, Deena, if you don't mind. The challenge for me is specifically in the disability piece, okay? One thing that we are in focus is to find people with disability that be talent, that be part of the processes. And in our region, it's a challenge. Our cities are not, accessible in general. No, our culture is not really accessible. The universities, not all of them are accessible. And this is something that we need to continue push and invest. And I don't see a big change in the following years. That has been something that I struggle, but it's something that we as a company need to push and be, maybe the drivers, to create these opportunities for that community.
Well,
Adriana, go ahead. Because no, go ahead, because it says mainly for Dri and Karla. So.
Okay. So yes, in LA we have different levels of engagement, not only from the companies but from the government, as I mentioned. And in some countries like Peru, where it's so difficult to employ an employee with disability, we have in Brazil a different scenario. Of course, the quotas are so aggressive, but we are very mature in this team. So you are, for example, in IBM, we have a specific team just to handle the identification of candidates and the whole work life of the people with disability in the company. So our leadership are so aware of the importance of being not only a US, but an inclusion company, that I feel, somehow I reached my goal as a leader to engage the senior leadership. However, when I think about Afro-descendant employment and the representation of, I would call Black people, okay, or Black employees, I think this is the challenge that we have here. And when you talk about intersectionality, what we see is that yes, we have a bunch of LGBT guys and girls and everybody working for us, but they do not represent also LGBT with disability and Black people. So I think our goal is also to be in mind that we are talking from a place of privilege, and that we can't forget that this intersectionality put many people behind us, behind many other talents that we have in the marketplace.
Fully agree. And each
cannot
country
add more
has,
because it's the same. Yeah, it's the same for me. For me, the challenge is disability, and in Latin America, it's not wrong to say Black people. And when you think about the total population in Brazil, 53% is Black. And when I look at the composition in my company, in administrative employees, is extremely low. It's in the range of 6%, and none of them has got to a leadership position. I have very intensive plans to really revert this with the intersection, as you said, with LGBT also, because that adds an additional complexity to all this equation. And we need to find a way of crossing these lines. But you need to start very early and give them the proper training. Because if you expect to hire the people with the same abilities as a normal people from upper mid class in the center of Sao Paulo, you will never choose them. So it's on us to really show and be proactive in the hiring process to provide all the tools and learnings in order to really succeed. But it's a challenge. It's the challenge of the year, and I see everybody's in this.
Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to complete my intervention here. I think each country has different challenges, and I fully agree. In Brazil, considering the government that we have to cover the 4% of people with disability is continue being an issue, because of course the talent is a lot of mobility, with a big turnover, with the talent with disability that has been creating. But at least there is, the government pushing this. is not exactly the same with the Black community. And I had the opportunity to be with them in December, just focusing on how we can implement initiatives to increase the Black representation in our office in Brazil. It is also hard, and thinking on the amount of the population, as you mentioned, Javier, it's incredible that you know we couldn't push more the inclusion of that community. It's bad to say that we couldn't. We need to continue pushing, you know, and find the correct talent for the company. Yeah,
absolutely, and to have the necessary and in some cases brave conversations about race and ethnicity and disability. There are two related questions. One is very specific to you, Karla. In the chat box, it's in Spanish. I can translate very briefly to English for everyone, not to Portuguese though, sorry, which is, there's a specific question about Diversity Week, which we'll get to. There's a broader question for everyone, and I think that these two things are related. So the question from Rodrigo is for you to expand on the Diversity Week, the specific platforms you're using, and how you're going to get people to participate. Then there's a related question from somebody else asking, how would you recommend across the panel to get diversity and inclusion initiatives off the ground in this COVID remote environment? So I'm pairing these because I'm hoping some of what Karla describes will be an answer to how you do diversity and inclusion from home.
Okay, good. Thinking on the Diversity Week, we have different events scheduled. Of course, a big communication campaign starting with our CEO, Martin Marron will send a message, invite the people to participate in the different events. And then the senior country officer will push, you know, and launch the week. And we schedule also some events focusing in the different chapters that we have in the region. Especially Pride will host a panel with trans employees in JP Morgan. That is great and will be you know, offered for the entire region. Accessibility is creating some videos for our employees, you know, to talk about the importance of the culture and why they are working in JP Morgan. Women on the Move will have a coffee chat with our new head of HR in the region, with Rebecca Ribetti, and also will host a session, in a yoga session. The yoga is part of the lessons that are, you know, proactively promoting in Argentina. And that will be one part of the events in the region. We are going to offer Journey for Inclusive Teams training for the region, 2 sessions. And also NextGen is hosting a session in which, in partnership with Learning, we are going to show all the tools, the learning tools that the bank is offering for our employees. No, that is the plan in general. I need to see if there is new events, you know, this week, but that is the plan in general. We are also having a town hall with the head of the business, Daniel Pinto, in the region, as part of the calendar for the Diversity Week. The tool that we are going to use is different. We are going to use Zoom, of course. We are going to use Jabber, that is also a tool that, for meetings in the bank. And for the learning, we are going to use Adobe Acrobat. That is a tool that helps us to interact with the people that is part of the training sessions.
Super. And then do you have, sorry. I think we welcome some broader thinking across the panel on what does it mean to raise these conversations up in virtual environments. Pardon me if I didn't, I hope I wasn't speaking over you, Dri.
No problem. So yes, just to complement, we do almost the same with virtual sessions, but we are focusing a lot on learning, in trying to understand how can we first address sexual and moral harassment in the company overall, including for the LGBT company. Because sometimes when you talk about sexual harassment, you think about sexual harassment because of women, against women, I would say. But then we are planning a whole training for managers and employee on this behalf. We continue working on unconscious bias in multiple ways. And of course, now that we are so connected with the benefits team, I think, and I can tell now because I know there are IBMers here, but there is a surprise for Brazil in this field soon. So we always try not to only to celebrate, connect people, mentoring, but also to establish, and reinforce our pillars, which benefits is one of the most important for us.
I cannot add too much different from the Dow perspective. We're transferring everything that we were doing face-to-face to virtual and using all the tools that are currently available, which are actually demonstrating that they're very strong. And as we get used to work with them, they're working. So for me, one of my concerns was the abused women. That was my topic, one of my topics of the year. The women that suffer bad treatment at home by the partners. And that was one of the topics. So it's not only continuing, but moving into new spaces also.
Mm-hmm.
And all in all, I think that the team is getting to know how to move forward. The point is reshaping what you were doing in the new environment. And that's what we are working on today as we speak.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. We've gotten, I hope we get to all of these. We have about 30 minutes left together. We are getting a lot of questions related to transgender inclusion. What can companies be doing? And also, what can individual diversity and inclusion leaders be doing to support, to better support transgender inclusion across the LATAM region?
Well, maybe I can start here and say that you probably know all the challenges of the transgender group of people, so I don't need to mention them here. We started doing a work with an NGO that was supporting them in order to try to pre-select them as contractors for Dow to give them the opportunity to have a proper job. And we have been very active with that. That program started in Brazil. It was moving nicely into Argentina. Obviously now that program is mainly challenged, but I think that the key area where we can act as a solution is, or catalyst for improving all this, is by providing a proper job, but the proper training to perform the job in the right way. We also have because of all these challenges, we put in Dow, and Dow Brazil, the headquarters in Brazil is an example, with the sexual neutral bathrooms and toilets, so that they are not discriminating by sex, so that they can feel much better when they come to work with us. And for eventually even for the employees who want to exercise a change of the organical sex, we support with hormone treatments through our social security system. So we discuss with our social security provider in order to support in case these changes happen. And we had a couple of cases already to really use them and be supportive. Challenge for me today is that in the COVID-19 environment, all these activities, for instance, like hiring, are more complicated. And I think we need to work a little bit on, I don't like the word, but on the charity part or sharing something, because I think we need to approach them and understand which are the current challenges, which are probably worse than ever before. So this is still a pending topic for our conversations with my teams next week.
Javier, I was just thinking about something that you said, is how much people are worried about losing their jobs. So this does not change among us, but it can be pretty much complicated for the ones, for the transgender community, including the ones that are not employed yet. So for us as a company, it will be a challenge to increase the representation not only for transgender, but also. So I think it's very important that we can give visibility, that we care about transgender people in our community. I mean, for example, here in Brazil, we changed recently the BRG leader, and one of the new BRGs is a transgender guy that worked with us for a long time, Gustavo. Many of you know him already. And I think you have to work on education and career supporting for the ones that are here. Of course, I'm just separating the benefits because as you know, in IBM, you have the support for hormonal therapy. We have in Mexico the full surgery subsidy by IBM as well. But I think together with their health, we should care about their career, understand their needs. And just to be very fair with the public that we have here, over 150 people hearing us, is so amazing. I think there are people from different levels on their companies, people just starting to work with these topics, people that are a little bit more mature. But for the ones that are just in the beginning, because I saw some question on how to deal with companies that doesn't have the values very well established, I think it's very important that you know your public, that you talk with every transgender people in your company to understand their specific need. Sometimes what I faced in IBM is that sometimes you are not going to do something so big because the number of transgender are so small. But if you do something for 5, 10 people, means 100% for these people, right? They are in this need. So don't wait to do something big. Look at your public, understand their needs, and try to address individual needs if possible.
I agree with both comments, and I think as a company we need to continue educating our people. No, same as we push training to teach our employees to work with people with disability. It's exactly the same. We need to continue educating our people on the inclusion, no, and in all in all the groups focusing on the different things, and with the trans population is not different. It's exactly the same.
Thank you so much. Can you expand a little bit? Dri, you raised the issue of companies that don't yet have a structure around diversity and inclusion. And admittedly, a lot of our networks as Out and Equal are with the multinationals. And then we know that often in the in-person forums, we get the regional companies or the in-country mid-sized businesses that in some cases are learning from the multinationals, but they also have to find their own voice in this. So can you talk a bit, given across the board here, your perspectives on Latin America, what are some tips for those that are raising these issues, maybe for the first time or alone?
Deena, we run periodically benchmark sessions in IBM Brazil, and I guess over 500 companies has already passed through this meeting, live meetings, in IBM or at InovaBra. Some guys here watching us from Brazil know it or have been there somehow. And this is a question that we always receive, is that how can I engage my leadership? Because diversity and inclusion cannot be done only looking at our platform, at our employees isolated. We have to do both, look at the leadership and to the community, BRG's members and communities at the same time. It's like a pressure that you do like this. So for me, it's very important that you understand, or if you are the manager of a company, if you are working in HR, understanding how you can better connect with your leader and engage from the business perspective, but from the personal perspective, because sometimes somebody with a personal interaction or experience with people with disability, LGBT community, doesn't matter, brings this sense of, I've heard this somehow, I pass through these emotions somehow, and we have to think about, at least it worked very well here in IBM. We did this, and now we are in a level where management understand the importance of inclusion. The employees feel they somehow can be more represented in management, but they feel supported. So if you want to begin something, it's important to understand who is the guy that you have to talk and engage multiple stakeholders.
And Deena, I'd like to tell you that even there are some international companies that they still don't have a real strategy about diversity and inclusion. And I'm not going to mention it here, but I'll share with all of you something. There's an event that is organized by our diversity and inclusion leader for Latin America, Patricia, who is changing job, but has done a fantastic job, together with the LGBT ERG, with the GLAD team, which is Ilimitadores, which means no limits, without the limits. And in there, we get suppliers and customers, and we give them some kind of starting point for understanding diversity and inclusion, and diversity and inclusion for the LGBT plus group. And to our surprise, obviously we invite those type of people, Adriana, the ones that really can move the needle in all these decisions. And sometimes it's the HR director of one of these companies that want to really initiate something and has the power of influence. The results were amazing. And luckily this year, it was going to happen the day we decided to shut the offices and start the lockdown, and therefore we couldn't do it. But I think we have an obligation, big companies that have already a very well-structured system of values, to start bringing this to the smaller companies. We will succeed with all of them? Not at all, because it depends very much on the mindsets of the decision makers, as Adriana mentioned. But I think we still have a lot of space to keep growing this. This is a movement, and it needs to continue.
I agree, and this is just to think on the chain of value. You know, we as a companies, as big companies, we need to add in our values, our suppliers, our clients, and continue, you know, promoting our diverse and inclusive culture. You know, Deena, that we in the past 2 years ago, we launched a mentoring program focusing on company to company. Just
Yes.
invite them, you know, to be part of the equality index in Mexico, and that is something that I believe is important. It's a commitment from us to continue doing, you know, to continue create this opportunity, because we understand not all of them knows how to do it. Some of them has a very good intention. Some of them, you know, have clear that this is a business case, but they do not know how to do it. And I think we can help them to be part of this initiative.
Yes, thank you.
But on the other side, Deena, let me tell you something. We have, for instance, an index where we rate how diverse and inclusive are our suppliers. So at a certain point, by making them feel economically that there's a value on it, they sometimes realize and they get to that moment. So I think it's important to even put some kind of nicely and elegantly placed pressure. Say, in all your values as a supplier, you're not so diverse, you're not so inclusive. I think it's fair.
Absolutely. And I should say that actually Dow was the same week that we were going to have our March forum in Sao Paulo. Dow had very graciously looked at influencing its own set of clients and supply chain. And so in the category of how can businesses that are committed to inclusion have an effect beyond their four walls. You know, we talk a lot about nonprofits. How can you positively support the external LGBTI community? But so much of what you do, IBM is wholly client facing, JP Morgan, huge client network as well. In your particular roles, have you had have you been leading or been called into efforts of, sort of what Javier was talking about, the ripple effect for supply chain or clients?
Yes, we do, Deena. This is also among of the main commitments, for example, of the Fórum de Empresas e Direitos LGBT, which is to connect with our suppliers and have the discussion and amplify the power of inclusion outside of our company. So yes, we've been doing this.
I fully agree. I fully agree. And as I mentioned, this is part of this chain of value, that we need to continue, push our suppliers to be part of this this culture.
Mm-hmm.
I think that when inclusiveness is part of your corporate strategy, it's sort of part of your job description, if I may say it. Apart from the fact that we do it from the heart. And I know that everybody, all 152 participants now, we're all doing it from the heart. But it's also a little bit of an obligation.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of our corporate strategy also. So for some people that sometimes are not, and you all know that in our companies, we may have people that are fully engaged, committed from the heart and the brain, as I always say. Some people are not so committed. Right. In those cases, it's our role to go and tell it, because it's part of your job, because it's part of the fact that you're working in this company. We're inclusive, we include everybody, and we need to try to generate this in the atmosphere that surrounds us. That's why I think it's so important that we go outside the limits of our offices and site and manufacturing sites, whatever, to the external world and bring this. It's part of the obligation.
Wonderful, thank you so much. We do have some questions that are coming in, and I think some of these we will answer offline. Because I know that the three of you are incredibly busy people, and we hope you can feel and see just absolutely from our hearts the gratitude for the rich conversation you provided today. I think I'll ask us to wrap up with one last question, and again, knowing that we will stay in touch with all the participants, and we will also explore some of these intercompany mentoring programs that Karla mentioned. I guess I would ask, let's end on a hopeful note. If each of you wants to share something that keeps you going, that is continuing to give you hope in the midst of what we're all facing around the world. It can be something small, big, silly, serious, but let's wrap up with one thing that keeps you going or gives you hope.
Well, for me now, very personally, I'm looking forward for the Mother's Day here in Brazil, which is May the 10th, to see my mother. Although I can't hold her, I will have lunch with her in a separate chair. But this keeps me going in this difficult time when I start to feeling tired. So I have 10 days ahead to see her closely. So this is my reason to keep going for now.
Thank you, Dri. That's beautiful. Thank you.
I agree. Something that we need to continue doing is keep close to the people that we love. Okay. Yeah. I lost my mother 1 year ago, and it's hard. Okay, but of course I have my father now, and I have my sisters, and I have my nephews, and we need to continue be close with the people that we love. That is something very challenging in this momentum, but it's something that we can do. Same as we connect with you now, and we talk, and we feel, and we, are passionate of the topic. We have to do the same with our lovers.
Thank you so much, Karla, and we are sorry for your loss. I remember last year, and we send you our love too. Thank you.
Well, family is important for me as for anybody else. My family is obviously far from here. It's spread around the world, but we are the only ones in Brazil. So anything that happens anyway, I know I'm not going to be able to see anybody of my friends and loved ones for quite a while. But I think what keeps me running is that I'm learning every day. And, I have the feeling that by being close to the people I work with, I can do something for them in the different aspects of their life. And I think I can bring something, or it's my feeling, but I think I had some demonstration from some of them that I can do something with them. So what keeps me working hard to be close to them is what makes me feel good. It makes me feel that I'm being able to help, which is the most important thing for me.
And one thing, Deena, we couldn't forget to take care of ourselves. More than ever, we need to be focused to be healthy, physically and mentally, okay? And it is, you know, something that should be also in our agendas. That is something that I recommend to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Karla. And then for those that have joined us, you'll be getting an email over the next week. This month is actually International Month to Recognize Mental Health. And so we have a new resource guide for companies, and I know many of you have programs. So we will continue to support and sustain each other. For myself, I'll just tell you, because I have so much admiration and joy in working with you, that often my personal check-ins are also work check-ins, because I never feel like I'm really working. In other words, I get to do this joyful work and connect with all of you, and I count you amongst my daily points of gratitude and inspiration. So thank you all so much. Thank you to the almost 200 people who joined us today. We will stay in touch. I hope you continue to stay healthy and well, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you. Obrigado.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deena and colleagues.
Gracias.
Thank you, Carla and Adriana.
Obrigada, gente.
Um prazer,
Tchau,
gracias.
Xavier. Tchau, Carla.